Hi, I'm Krutika, and today's conversation is with Alpa. We discuss a topic that's guaranteed to affect 100% of women at some point in their life: perimenopause. Referring to the years before a woman stops menstruating, it can be triggered as early as when a woman is in her 30s. Despite it being a certainty for every woman, the reality is that the struggles of perimenopause are seldom shared so openly. Whether it's denial, fear, or judgment, women silently suffer, choosing isolation over support, enduring years of pain over respite, and ultimately feeling a loss of identity. This conversation is not offering medical advice. Rather, it's one woman's journey of enduring over 2 decades of perimenopausal symptoms that affected all aspects of her being. Now, on the other side of the journey, Alpa spotlights what we don't always hear. We discuss how trauma internalized will eventually find its release and how holistic methods of self-care help see her through the worst of her symptoms. Alpa's journey conveys bravery, courage, and a level of resilience that is hugely inspirational. Perimenopause is inevitable for women, but understanding it shouldn't be optional for anyone. If this episode resonates, I'd strongly encourage you to share it because I think wider awareness will create empathy, and empathy has the power to create change and hold space for understanding. Hello, Alpa. So good to have you on my podcast. How are you today?
I am very well, a little bit jet lagged, but I'm very well. Thank you for having me on.
Alpa, you've mentioned jet lag there. So, of course, I'm going to ask you, where have you just come back
I've
from?
I've just got back from Dubai on Thursday night, so yeah, I'm still recovering.
Was this your first visit to Dubai? Have you been there before?
Oh,
Tell us a little about it.
I've been going there for 30 years, so it was actually a quick 4-night trip to see a friend that I haven't seen for 25 years. And she had flown over from Australia, so I got to see her and her family, so that was really lovely. But yeah, it was just a really quick trip.
Amazing. And Dubai
Yeah.
must be really lovely this time of year with the weather, right?
It was actually cold, funnily
Oh,
enough.
no.
Yeah, even though it was anything between 23 and 26 degrees, the wind, it had a chill. So,
Really? That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
So, funnily, last week I recorded with a guest who's actually based in Dubai and she used
right.
to live in London. And what was quite funny is she talked about it being cold in the evenings. And I kind of
Yeah,
cracked a joke because I was like, what's the temperature? She's like 18 degrees. And I was like,
yeah,
Sheena, have you
yeah.
forgotten that that's our spring here?
I mean, I was going out for walks at 6 o'clock in the morning for 2 hours and I'd have to
Oh,
wear a
wow.
hoodie. You couldn't go out in
Really?
a t-shirt. Yeah,
Oh,
it was cold.
okay.
Yeah,
See, it's interesting because you think of Dubai, quite warm, but
yeah.
of course, across the year there'll be different temperatures.
Well,
But
they tend to get high winds during January, February time, but I think this year has been quite windy out there. So
yeah,
yeah, it's been colder than normal.
yeah. And did you do anything that was slightly different to what you've done on previous visits, or was it just to hang out with your friend from Australia?
Yeah, I literally hung out with her and her family for the first day, day and a half, and then that was it. I had a couple of days just to myself, just to relax and do nothing. Yeah, it was
That sounds
lovely.
amazing.
Yeah.
Now, Alpa, we could probably spend a lot longer just talking about your Dubai travels and other travels you might have planned. But I know we're going to come on to discuss what I think is a really topical topic,
Yeah,
especially now,
yeah.
which is about perimenopause. But before we even deep dive into that, Alpa, I know you, but my listeners may not know who you are. So could you just start by introducing yourself? Tell us, who is Alpa?
So I'm a 57-year-old single mother. My son is now 28. I have been in the beauty industry for nearly 40 years. I've been a facialist more than anything else within the beauty industry for all that time. And yeah, it's just me.
Oh, do you know you've slipped in that you're 57, and I still can't believe it, Al, because I visit you to work magic on my skin, and you do
And your
work your
skin looks
magic.
amazing.
All props to you. But 57, you absolutely don't look it. I mean, what's your secret,
Thank you.
Alpa, for looking as youthful as you
Nothing. I've
do?
just always looked after my skin since I was probably about 14 years old, 15 years old. But in those days, it was quite harsh. I mean, you'd end up using things like, there was a product called, I remember, 1006, which was neat alcohol that you'd put on your skin to clean your skin with. Yeah, I mean, it's been banned now. They don't make it anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've been probably looking after my skin since I was a teenager. So yeah,
And of course, we'll be talking about your journey with perimenopause, but have you
yeah.
noticed changes in your skin over the years?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. All of a sudden, it wasn't during perimenopause so much, but straight after, when I was in full-blown menopause, all of a sudden my skin just aged like overnight. I woke up one morning, looked in the mirror, and I was like, oh my gosh, where's the plumpness in my skin? My neck has started to sag, my jowls have started to sag. All of a sudden, overnight, it happened for me. But yeah, it was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
imagine. Now, for our listeners who may not fully understand, I suppose, this concept of perimenopause and menopause, because I do have male listeners, and I'm hoping
yeah.
the male listeners do tune into this episode because I think it's
Yeah,
so important, not just for women, but for the males out there, just so they
yeah.
can understand the females around them. How would you describe perimenopause in your own words?
I think perimenopause is the start of the body changing, losing its estrogen and progesterone, eventually stopping your periods. But it's not as simple as that. There are so many side effects, I would say, of perimenopause that can actually affect a woman's body so drastically, that it can actually change not only their personality, but also their day to day routine and feelings about themselves. I mean, as you know, I see a lot of women within the salon every single day. Even though I heard their stories about perimenopause, I still felt like I was going mad because I just didn't know what was going on in my own body. So the difference between perimenopause and actual menopause, they say, is when you've had a full year without a period and then you're in full blown menopause. However, in my case, I know I was in full blown menopause for about 3 years before I had another bleed, which is not unheard of, but it is unusual. So obviously, went back to the doctors. They checked me out. Everything's fine. It can happen. But the build up, I would say my perimenopause probably lasted about a good 10 to 12 years.
Wow,
Yeah. But
that
I
is a
think,
long time.
yeah, but I think in the beginning, I wasn't quite sure what it was because every woman has different kind of side effects from it, and I just couldn't pinpoint it. For me, it started with, I think, I had a frozen shoulder all of a sudden. It made me think it could possibly be perimenopause because I had a client that had a frozen shoulder for 5 years during her perimenopause. And I thought, I wonder if I'm getting into perimenopause. But at the time, my periods were still quite regular. So I didn't really think much of it. But then it went from my frozen shoulder, I got tennis elbow. And then
What's a
slowly,
tennis elbow? Sorry.
it's where you get the joint pain in your elbow.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like an elbow pain, and it was just constant. Like with my frozen shoulder, it was my right arm, I couldn't lift it, it was so painful. And then from that I got plantar fasciitis in my feet, and
Gosh,
yeah,
what's
and
that?
that's, it's inflammation of the tendon in the sole of your foot, and I could barely stand with it. It was just, at that time I was doing a lot of standing work with my job, and I just remember I could barely stand. And it wasn't until I think the tiredness really kicked in. I could probably have a 12-hour night's sleep and I'd still be exhausted first thing in the morning. So I went to see my GP, and as I got up from my chair to go in to see her, she said to me, "Oh, what's wrong with your hip?" And I said, "There's nothing wrong with my hip." I said, "But my foot really hurts." And she went, "Oh, we need to get that seen to." So she sent me to a foot doctor who said I had plantar fasciitis, and that was one of the, I would say, the byproducts of being in perimenopause. But they don't tell you these things, unfortunately. You have to kind of figure things out for yourself.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, every woman's different. How it affects every woman is completely different.
Yeah.
It's like puberty, but 1,000 times worse.
Oh, Alpa. So I know you've hit on some of your kind of symptoms for yourself, which I do want to come on to address. But when did this all sort of start for you? Because you obviously say you're 57. You had that three-year gap where you weren't having your periods, and then you had a
Yeah,
bleed. But when
yeah.
did you first start to notice those changes in your body, and you were thinking, "Hang on a minute, what is happening here?"
I would say around the age of 35, when
Wow.
I first started waking up in the middle of the night with sweat patches under my breast. And I thought, oh, that's a bit odd. That's never happened before. But I was never hot. I've never been a sweaty person. So for me, it was really unusual. But I didn't think anything of it at the time. But then I noticed my periods were changing. They were kind of getting really heavy, quite clotty. By the time I was about 45, they were at their worst. I think my doctor put me on something called mefenamic acid, which helped with the cramps because the cramping was so painful that I'd want to be sick. That's how painful it was.
Dear.
Like I said, the periods were so heavy. It was just like almost I'd killed someone on the way to the bathroom first thing in the morning. Yeah, it wasn't pleasant. That's when I kind of realized something's amiss now. But it took a good 10 years, like from 35 to 45, to realize I was actually going through that process.
Yeah.
And then from about 45 to 55, it was like hell on earth. That's the only way I can describe it. Yeah,
Alpa, bless you. You've
yeah,
endured a few decades of this then. And
yeah,
obviously, you've described the various different symptoms that manifested for you in terms of that frozen shoulder, the tennis
yeah,
elbow, the tiredness, the sweaty patches under your breast, which you kind of
yeah,
referred to in your, sort of mid 30s. With all
yeah.
these symptoms that were showing up, what was the worst of them and how did you manage it all? Because it seems like a lot to be dealing with,
Yeah,
Alpa.
I think I was probably one of the unfortunate ones.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that the trauma you carry in your body,
Mm-hmm.
it really comes out when you're going through perimenopause. And my body had just shut down completely. I was like, all of a sudden, overnight, I couldn't sleep. I was like sleeping at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. I was getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning. There were some days I was up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd end up taking the dog out for a walk because I was like, I can't sleep. What do I do now? And it was also, there was no night sweats. There was none of the usual kind of menopause symptoms. But the worst thing for me was when I first started getting anxiety and panic attacks. The first panic attack I had, I remember I was laying on the sofa watching a movie, and all of a sudden my heart felt like it was out of my chest and it was in my throat and it was throbbing in my ear, to the point I actually sat up and I thought, oh my God, I think I'm having a heart attack. It was so severe, but there was no pain. So I kind of kept talking to myself, thinking, okay, this isn't a heart attack, but it's something I've not had before. I don't know what it is.
Were you talking yourself out of sort of the severity, I guess, of what you were
Yeah,
experiencing? Is that what
because
you
of
were
the
doing?
fear of it. I didn't know what it
Okay.
was. And I was like, this is okay, this is okay. And I just remember it probably subsided within a couple of minutes. And then it didn't happen again for months and months and months. And then all of a sudden, it started happening every single day. But not only the pounding of the heart, it would be internal jitters. And then that little voice in my head would go, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, like, what's life doing to me? What am I doing to myself? And it was just a constant barrage of negative chatter in my head constantly. Even with my job, like, I've been doing it 35 years plus now, and I was constantly doubting myself. I would literally be in a ball in the corner of the room before a client walked through the door. I'd literally be sobbing my eyes out, just sobbing because I had no idea why this was happening and why I was feeling like this. And then the client would walk in and I'd just be normal. I'd just be absolutely normal. You wouldn't even have known. But even clients that I've known for over 30 years, the doubt just kept creeping in the whole time. That was the worst thing for me.
Yeah.
And it was constant, like every single day. There may be a little bit of respite, a day here and a day there, but it was just constant every single day. I mean, it still happens now, but it's not as bad, I
Yeah.
have to say, thankfully.
Oh, I'm so sorry you've had to go
That's
through what you've had
okay.
to go through, and thank you so much for candidly sharing that. There's a few
Yeah.
things I want to unpack with what you've kind of said there, and I hope it's not too personal a question to ask,
No.
but I'd noted that you mentioned you feel that there was trauma you were carrying in your body that seemed to have come out when you were in perimenopause.
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable enough sharing, what was that trauma that you were referring to?
No, it's fine. I have had quite a complex life
Mm-hmm.
with family as well as friends. Unfortunately, I haven't been privileged enough to have a supportive family or friends. So I kind of dealt with things on my own. And I think over the years, previously, what had happened with issues with parents, families, long story short, I ended up just before I was 50, I ended up making the decision of walking away from everybody, for my own sanity, really, more than anything else. And at the time, I think the guilt that I felt, because, we're brought up Asian girls, families, everything. But unfortunately, looking back now, I was brought up in quite a toxic environment, which for years, I remember my son saying to me when he was younger, these people don't love you. And I had the mindset of, they're my family. Of course they love me. But my own child was telling me, these people don't love you. But it took me a long time to realize that it was more of an obligation with my family rather than the love and the support, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
carried that for a very, 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 very long time. And I think it all came to a head when my dad died. It was what brought on the perimenopause full blast. Because they say that shock can bring it on quite quickly. Yeah, and I think that shock brought it on. And all of a sudden, overnight, I felt like an old lady. I couldn't even climb the stairs without being out of breath, without knee pain, ankle pain, any kind of joint pain. I couldn't even open jars with my hands because I felt like my wrists were going to break. So yeah, all that, to me, it was all very traumatic, and the body had that overload of trauma, and it was like, I've had enough, and I'm going to show you the signs I've had enough, and that's what happened with me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I
That's
mean,
okay.
it's we humans have a way of internalizing
Yeah,
emotions, and they do
yeah,
say that the body will reach a point, isn't it, where it just
absolutely.
implodes. And I think that's what
Yeah.
has seems to have been the case. I mean,
Yeah, for me it was definitely, without a doubt.
yeah. And at what point did you go to the doctor? And, obviously you it was over a few decades, but what was it that, you kind of did to manage this? Did you go to the doctor? Did they help you out? Because sometimes women don't get taken seriously.
No, I was the unfortunate one where I didn't really get heard by my GP. Um, I was sent to the menopause clinic. I was adamant I wasn't going to go on HRT because um, my mum had died of breast cancer at the age of 36. So for
And again,
me,
HRT for the listeners is
hormone replacement therapy for people that are perimenopausal. Yeah, it puts the estrogen and progesterone back into your body. And I know there's scientific evidence that it does help with women's bodies, in the sense it helps with osteoporosis, also makes you feel normalish again, helps with brain fog and things like that. But I had always been adamant that I wasn't going to go on anything that was estrogen based, because my mum passed away in 1982. So I think she had her breast operation in 1979. And I know the medical kind of side of things was very different in those days. But I remember before she died, they actually removed her ovaries to bring down her estrogen levels. So that had always stuck with me, that I was never going to go on HRT because of it. And I remember being sent to the clinic, and the doctor there said to me, "Oh, you can go on the patches, it's not a problem." And I said, "Yeah, but my mum passed away with breast cancer, and it was estrogen based. And they said, oh, no, it's fine, you can go on it. I refused to go on it. I was like, I'm just going to go cold turkey and just deal with everything that life's going to throw at me. I'm just going to do it. It was really hard. I can't say it was easy. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But I'm a fighter and I got through it. I did. I just got through it. You just got to deal with it and just do it.
And what a fighter you are, to have endured a couple of decades of what you went through,
Yeah.
without sort of any real, I guess, medical intervention. I mean, I don't know, were there alternative things, Alpa, that you
I did
tried to help you manage
I
symptoms?
did look into alternative things, but I kind of figured out my own way of dealing with it. I did a lot of research for the anxiety and panic attacks. I remember when I had that bleed after 3 years, I went to the doctor and it was a male doctor, and I just burst into tears. And he said to me, is there something else? And I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I've tried and I have no idea what's wrong with me. And he said, right, I'm going to send you to the talking therapies people. So this was in, I think, August 2024. I was referred and I was diagnosed with high functioning depression. And I was amazed. I was like, what's that? You hear of high functioning alcoholics and stuff, but high functioning depression, I was like, what is that? But it's the same theory. You're a person that gets on with life day to day, but the triggers in your head and your body are constantly there. So I did have therapy last year in February that lasted about 10 weeks, and that did help. But from that, I kind of realized that I needed to take the bull by the horns and just really take care of me. Because for years in my head, that little voice kept saying, oh, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. But now that voice was saying, take better care of yourself, look after you. And then I started doing my breath work again. I started walking again. And it all coincided with the fact that I was still in full menopause. But now, instead of my GP helping me with the perimenopause and the symptoms that went with it, they were now telling me I was diabetic, type 2 diabetes, I was overweight, I was a certain percentage of having a heart attack.
Oh
And
dear.
rather than actually talking to me and asking me what my lifestyle and what my stress levels were, they just wanted me to pop pills. And that's when I started getting stronger, and I took a stand and I refused to take medication. I said, no, I'm going to get my weight down and I'm going to look after myself better. And my levels for diabetes have dropped considerably, that
Well done.
even my diabetic doctor was like, I'm so proud of you. And I said to them, I'm not taking the medication. They actually threatened me, because last year I had a bit of a health scare and they thought it might be gallstones.
Oh dear.
And the diabetic nurse rang me and she said, they won't operate on you if you're not on metformin. So they made me take metformin. But literally after Christmas, I saw the diabetic doctor and I said, I'm not taking this anymore. My levels have dropped. I've done it by myself. I'm not taking this anymore. So she actually signed me off, which was great. But it was all related to the menopause. They don't tell you when your estrogen and progesterone drop, you have thyroid issues as a woman. I'm on levothyroxine, but I'm on the smallest dose. My GP wanted to up the dose. I was like, no. Recently, my GP wanted me to go on statins. I was like, no, I'm not going on statins. They don't explain to you that when you're going through menopause, these things do get flagged, but they don't tell you how to maintain it so that you don't have to go on medication. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And then, do you know what? I love how you have such a level of self awareness, and you've clearly done the research to know that
Yeah,
you don't just want to be taking pills. And the sad reality is that a lot of people that are probably going to doctors haven't taken the time out to research holistic approaches that
yeah,
actually can help your body and work, rather than popping pills and maybe getting even dependent on those pills. And often when you then come off the
absolutely.
pills, your body has that kind of, what's the right word I'm looking for? You know, where it just has that effect where it's become addicted to the medication, you come off
Yes,
the medication, and then you have a worse symptoms
yes,
thereafter.
yes. I mean, look, I'm not saying tea is a bad thing. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I'd always said I'd never do it, and I'm glad I never did it. Yes, it was hell on earth, but I'm glad I went through it, and I'm glad I've done it because I feel so much better for it, for
Hmm.
myself.
Hmm.
But I'm not saying that women shouldn't take HRT, because there are some women that actually do need it
Exactly. Yeah.
because their symptoms are so bad that they can't function every
Hmm.
day.
Yeah.
And this is what I hear from a lot of my female clients, is that brain fog they get when they go to work, it actually is quite detrimental to their job and what happens within their, what they do in their job, that obviously even female bosses don't understand some of the time. Male bosses, yeah, you can understand they don't get it, but I think, something has to change, because it is really debilitating for a woman.
Yes,
I know.
yes. And, I'm so glad you've sort of mentioned that point about there are women that are in careers experiencing things like this, and it can really be, it really affect their everyday life and, and
Yep,
their sense of identity as well. Because if you're
yep,
losing, a sense of yourself in terms of you can't think or function at work, you're experiencing physical symptoms, you become a shell of yourself. And that's such an
absolutely.
important point to flag. Now, there's something I made a note of when you were talking about your mum. Did you ever speak to your mum about perimenopause?
She was 36 when she died. I was 14 when she died. So
Wow.
actually, it was a week before my 14th birthday. So no,
And so there
I
weren't
mean,
any females around you that you could have kind of heard their stories of menopause or perimenopause? I mean, I don't know if it's a thing in the Indian community, right?
do
Women
you know
don't
what? It's
really talk
really
about it.
funny. Even now, I remember as I was starting the perimenopause and becoming aware of it, I used to have this mums group that I'd known since the kids were at prep school, and one of the mums in that group is 10 years older than me. I remember because we'd meet up once every couple of months for dinner or go to the pub, and we went out for drinks. And I remember we were all sitting around a table, and I said, "Do you know what? I think I'm going through perimenopause because this, that, and the other." And nobody said anything. Nobody acknowledged it. And I'm quite an open book. I like to talk about things. I like to get my feelings out there, and I like to express things like how I feel or whatever. But nobody ever spoke about it. And I know years ago, women didn't talk about it. Women, I just remember one of my aunties, my dad's youngest sister, saying to me, "Oh, when my grandmother was going through menopause, all she did was shout at everybody. She would just scream at everybody." And it was really funny because I went through a good few years where I would just scream at my son for no reason. The rage I felt, and how that boy did not run for the hills, I do not know. I mean, he did lock him in his bedroom and I didn't see him for days and days and days. Honestly, he would come downstairs and I would just, over nothing, absolutely nothing. And it just brought it home to me that obviously my grandmother was going through the same thing, but nobody spoke about it. And even now, I really wish women would sort of be more open about how they feel going through perimenopause.
Yeah, yeah. And you're absolutely right. And you sort of also referred to, the doctor diagnosing you with high functioning depression, which I can only imagine is because you are internalizing everything and on the surface of
Absolutely.
it, trying to just get on with life. And I think a lot of Indians also have that mentality. And I don't know if you agree, Alpa, that we just brush things under the carpet with a view
Yeah.
to just, yeah, let's just get on with life,
Yeah. And I have to admit, denial played a very big part in my menopause journey, because, and looking back now, if I wasn't in denial, I probably would have lost it completely. That denial saw me through, because all I kept saying was like, "I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm going to get through this, I'm going to get through this." But yeah, there was a lot of denial.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that sort of therapy that you had for, was it 10 sessions or so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
How
about
did
10 weeks, I think.
10
Yeah.
weeks, yeah. And how was that? I mean, how did you find therapy? Was that the first time you'd experienced
No, I've
therapy?
had therapy. I've had proper therapy for over 25 years, on and
Mm-hmm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
But this was, they gave me an option of whether I wanted to have therapy again or what's it called? CBT, the
Okay. Yeah.
cognitive,
Cognitive behavioral
that's
therapy.
it.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me try that because I'd not tried it before. And that was really interesting. She was so lovely and she was so patient. We got there in the end and we figured out why the anxiety was coming up. And it was all, again, to do with my childhood. Again, it was carrying it through, carrying it through. And that constant chatter in my head of not feeling worthy and not being good enough. And so she saw me through all of that. We did some exercises that helped me through that. So now when I get that little doubt in my head, I kind of know what to do. Whereas before I didn't really know what to do. I just went with it and made myself probably feel worse. But now I kind of have that little bit of knowledge of how to work through it.
Yeah. So she's
Yeah,
clearly equipped you with some of the tools and techniques you can apply
absolutely.
in your
Yeah.
everyday life. Has any of those techniques included journaling or sort of writing down your thoughts? Because I know
Um,
that's often advised as a way to kind of
yes,
process.
journaling was one of the things, but I tend not to journal
Hmm.
because, oh God, going back to my mum's. So the only diary I had kept as a teenager was the year my mum died. And yeah, so it's a little bit traumatic for me to journal, but I do still journal. I'll make little notes, I'll make little points that, okay, I've had a really bad day today, tomorrow's another day, let's try again, kind of thing. But I won't actually journal my fully fledged feelings for that day.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to that diary from
Yeah.
1982.
Yeah. And it
And
works
it's
for
funny, I
some.
still keep that diary. I've kept it and I read through it maybe once every 10 years. But I just can't bring myself to journal.
Yeah. And fair enough, it doesn't work for everyone. It's one of those things
Yeah.
that some people like it,
Breathing
others don't.
techniques work best for me
Right.
and cold showers.
Cold
Yeah.
showers. Wow.
Ice cold showers. Yeah. If I'm feeling really anxious and that feeling of my heart constantly pounding doesn't go away with the breath work, I'll just jump in a cold shower.
I guess is it because the cold shower forces you to get out your head and into your body because you're
Yeah, you
just
have to
focusing on
stay
the
in that
sensation.
moment.
Yes, yeah. Because you're trying to just breathe through the how bloody cold the water is.
Yeah, I just get into the cold shower. My son thinks I'm nuts, and I keep telling him to do it. I tell everyone to have a cold shower at the end of their shower, but I will literally, in the middle of the day, if I'm having a really bad panic attack in between clients, I'll go and have a cold shower.
Yeah. But it
But it makes me
works.
feel amazing afterwards.
Yeah, and they do say,
Yeah,
I think there is science to back up that there are definitely benefits to
yeah.
doing a cold shower or cold plunge. And actually, my first experience of a cold plunge was in Budapest when we went last year. And we went
Okay,
to this spa where they had different pools of varying temperatures.
right.
And yeah, there was one that was a cold plunge, and I was sort of being a bit of a wimp before. My husband did it and he's like, "Come on, let's do it together." So then we both did do it together, and actually I was pretty impressed with how I managed to just calm my body down once I was in
Yeah,
there. And I didn't
yeah.
just go in and walk straight back out. I took my time and I was like, "Oh." And then there was a moment of feeling proud after I'd done it.
Yeah, it's the sympathetic nervous system that puts you in that anxious, panicky mode. And when you're in a cold plunge or a cold shower, your parasympathetic nervous system just kicks in instantly and your heart rate goes down. So it's amazing what it can do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many minutes you were in the plunge
Oh no, it
for.
wasn't minutes.
Really?
It definitely wasn't minutes. It was probably maybe just under a minute. I think that was long
I
enough for
can do
me.
3 minutes in the winter and I can do 6 minutes in the summer. I can't manage 6 minutes in the winter. I'll come
Oh
out
my
looking
God, Alpa, that's pretty
like a dead
epic.
person. Yeah, 3 minutes max I can do. And it's great because I don't take a timer in there. So in my head, I'm
Yeah,
counting
yeah.
under the cold water and it just brings me down literally within seconds. It's amazing.
Alpa, obviously, you sort of mentioned how the doctor, initially they dismissed your symptoms. They weren't taking you seriously. They eventually did, and you sort of had this therapy. You mentioned earlier also that you've not always had the support network around you with your toxic family, etc.
Yeah.
I kind of just want to ask, did you then rely on your son or convey what you were going through to your son who you live with? Because I imagine he probably figured out maybe that something wasn't quite right. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, unfortunately, again, because of my state of mind, I couldn't sit him down and explain anything. All I kept doing was screaming at him. And that's why he ran away into his bedroom. And now, in hindsight, I can actually look and pinpoint and say, I should have done that better. I should have sat him down and explained what I was. I actually remember screaming at him and saying to him, "You don't see me. You don't hear me. You look at me and you look right through me. It's like that's how I felt, was like I didn't exist anymore." And now we can sit down and have conversations, like normal human being, adult conversations. At that time, I wanted that help from him. I wanted him to understand what I was going through, but I couldn't express it to him. So how is he meant to understand if I can't logically explain it to him? All I'm doing is screaming at him. One birthday, I think it was about 2 years ago, he had booked me a lovely massage at a very expensive hotel in London. So I knew I was going to a spa, but because my anxiety and panic attacks were so bad at the time, I said to him, "You have to take me. I can't get on the train. I can't leave. I couldn't leave the house some days. The only thing that would make me leave the house was to take the dog for a walk. That I could manage. Anything else, it was like, I can't do this." That was the other thing. My confidence went completely. Even getting in the car and driving the dog to the vet or the groomers, my anxiety would kick in. Anyway, I remember we left the house and we were just walking up the road to the station, and he looked at me and he was like, "Do you want to stop for a minute, Mum?" And I was like, "No, I'm fine, I'm fine." I hadn't realised I was having a panic attack and I was breathing really shallow and it was taking my breath away. That he said to me, "Do you want to just sit down for a minute?" And I was like, "No, no, no, no." Because in my head, I thought, if I get to the station, I'm fine. I'll be fine. We got on the train. There was a lady, a Chinese lady on the train with us, and she was coughing and coughing and coughing, and she had a mask on, but then she decided to sit right next to me. So now my anxiety is really kicking in because, COVID was still a big thing at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get COVID. I'm going to get COVID. And my son was literally just sitting there and he was just watching me the whole time. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to do. But by the time we got to the hotel, I was so, I was just so exhausted from it all that when he left me there for my massage, it was a lovely massage, but I just couldn't settle. I just could not settle. It was the weirdest thing. Like the time I could have really relaxed for that 90 minutes, I was talking to the therapist because I was like, I just need to keep my mind going. I can't just settle.
I hear you. I sometimes find when I go for a massage as well, when my brain is just not fully clear, there's lots of chatter in my mind. I'm in the massage and I can't relax because I'm thinking, what is the masseuse going to touch next? Is she going to apply the right pressures? So I find sometimes the experience of a massage itself can be, for me personally, can be a bit of a challenge. But
See, I can relax. I mean, even in
oh, can you?
Dubai, I had this lovely lavender magnesium exfoliation with a massage, and I warned the therapist as soon as I lay down. I was like, if I snore, just let me be. And literally within seconds, I was out for the count. And I remember saying to my son when I got back, I said, I think I scared her because at one point I must have just gone because I was so relaxed. And she actually stopped. I felt her stop doing the massage. I was like, I wonder if she thought I was having a heart attack or something, but I was just so relaxed.
Well, my husband, I think, very like that. So we had a couples massage when we were in the Maldives last year in December, and obviously we were in the same room because
Lovely.
it's a couples massage, right?
Yeah.
And at one point, he did start. He's going to hate me for putting this on the podcast. He's probably going to get me to edit this bit out because he QAs it.
No,
But
don't.
he did. But he was literally like snoring away, and I couldn't help but giggle. Me and my masseuse were giggling because he clearly was loving life, and he just
Yeah,
knocked out.
yeah, absolutely.
Can I just ask, have you connected with other women that have experienced what you have experienced? Because I know when, you have certain health related issues, sometimes the GPs can be good at sort of connecting you with other groups, communities. Have you had that?
No, unfortunately. Do you know, my faith in my GP has just gone down the pan, unfortunately. What I did do was I spoke to a lot of my clients who had already been through perimenopause and menopause, and just listening to their stories made me feel normal again. Because unfortunately, there really isn't support for women within the NHS, and I just find it really sad because realistically, our lifestyles as women have changed so drastically over the decades. You know, our grandparents, our grandmothers, even our mothers, like their lifestyle wasn't as stressful. Yes, they had stresses, but they weren't mental stresses like we have, not only mental stresses, but also physical stresses. I think our jobs, our lifestyles, whereas they were more homebound. Yes, they had the stresses of bringing up the children, doing the housework, doing the cooking, different to what we have now. And I just remember talking to someone not so long ago, and they pretty much said the same thing as me, is that now that as women we've evolved more and we have more um, stress, which produces more cortisol within our body, um, it affects us during menopause a lot differently from when our mothers went through it or our grandmothers went through it. I know myself, I think when you first met me, I was a lot heavier. And a lot of that was my cortisol was through the roof. I just remember my wrists being swollen, my fingers being swollen, my belly was like that proper round belly. And it didn't matter. I was intermittent fasting, I was walking, I was taking the dog for a walk. You know, even though I didn't have the energy for it, I was making myself do it. And last year, how can I describe it? I'm just trying to think. The the only way I can describe it is the thing that put me into perimenopause when my dad died. The same thing when the dog died took me out of it, like within overnight. My cortisol levels dropped. I started losing the weight. I lost 15 kgs. You know, I
Well,
just was doing my walking. I was still doing my intermittent fasting, but all of a sudden now my body and the cortisol levels had dropped. Everything was going back to normal. And it's the weirdest thing to describe because at the time, I didn't understand why I couldn't lose the weight. I couldn't understand why I was doing all this walking. Nothing was helping. And it was really kind of deflating. But then, having spoken to this other person not so long ago, it just made me realize actually my cortisol levels were through the roof, that nothing would have helped. And
yeah.
since then, I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about cortisol levels for women and how it really affects us, you know?
Yes. I've heard
And
that
I
too.
think all of that combined with losing your estrogen and your progesterone, your body just goes crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've definitely heard that. And estrogen and the cortisol relationship, there is a relationship there.
oh,
I
absolutely.
don't have the scientific knowledge to describe it, and I'm not even going to attempt to, but
Yeah,
I've heard things of a very similar nature. So no, thank you for sort of sharing that. I
yeah.
I guess what I wanted to ask Alpa is, are you over the worst of it?
I am definitely over the worst of it. It has been absolutely liberating. There is light at the end of the tunnel, I promise you. It is so liberating that I just feel so much freer. The stress levels can go up and down. That's fine. I know how to deal with it. But I'm more relaxed about it. I'm not so tense about it. I don't think I'm over the worst of the anxiety and the panic attacks because they still come and go. I think that's something I'm going to have to learn to live with more than anything else. I think traveling is good. I think getting out of your head is good. I think self-care is amazing. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in that industry, but like I said, even going to Dubai, I made sure I had that time where I had the massage and it was amazing. I felt amazing. I think all those things as women, we really need to take care of ourselves because we forget. And this was, I don't know if you've heard of Gabor Mate.
I have, yes, he's amazing.
Right. So he did this podcast. I think their name's Mel Robinson,
Oh,
if I'm not
yes.
mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Is she the author of Let Them?
yes,
The Let Them
yes,
theory? Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And she was having a conversation with him, and I distinctly remember him saying, women end up having, I think it was either 70 or 80% of women end up having an autoimmune disease later on in life or when they're going through perimenopause or menopause because women naturally are givers. We don't think about ourselves. We always think about others before we think about ourselves. And it was so interesting because that hit home to me. And I just thought, oh my gosh, not only am I in the industry where I give, and there's a lot of energy kind of that bounces off myself and my clients. So I give a lot, but I also, being brought up in the way that I was brought up, I was always made to feel that guilt if I didn't cook for my son, or if I didn't clean, or if I didn't do this, or if I didn't do that. And it just hit home. And I thought, do you know what? If I don't do the washing up for a week, I'm not going to feel guilty about it. There's only me and my son. Nobody else is going to see it. Fine, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, it's hit the nail on the head there,
Yeah,
and it's sort of realizing that sometimes what we end up doing is just putting expectations and pressures on ourselves. Some
yeah,
of it's societal conditioning, some of it is what we've grown up seeing.
yeah,
And unless
absolutely.
you pause and just rain check or question, you'll just keep following
Yeah,
whatever you've seen
yeah,
around you.
yeah, yeah.
So
I mean,
I
that
agree.
mindset, it took me a long time to get over that mindset, I must admit, because it's inbred in you, isn't it? As an Asian girl, you're brought up
It
in the
is.
family. You got to cook a full Indian meal. You've got to do this. You've got to do. Well, no, actually, you don't.
Yeah. Do you know it's interesting because I find myself sometimes saying thank you to my husband when he's washed the dishes or he's emptied the dishwasher. And again, it
Yeah,
comes back to what you're saying. It's that conditioning, isn't it? Because
yeah,
growing up in an Indian household, the women are naturally the ones that do the domestic chores. They manage the
absolutely,
house. And so,
absolutely.
yeah, when, and nowadays I do question it. So if I find myself saying thank you, I'll be like, no, I'm going to take that back.
Yeah.
Because you live in the house with me.
Yeah, but
You
you
should
say that.
be.
I still say thank you to my son. Like, he'll do the bins. I'll be like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Just in the interest of time, Albert, just a couple of quick questions to wrap up with. Now, earlier you were giving some wonderful advice to, how I suppose women that are potentially going through what you've experienced could do. You called out self care specifically. Just to flip the question, if you were, God forbid, to ever go back to that decade, the 2 decades, I suppose, where you were experiencing what you were experiencing, what would you do differently in terms of managing or navigating it?
I would definitely take more time for me. I went the opposite way and I stayed so busy. Again, it was that denial. If I stay busy, I'll be fine. If I stay busy, I'll be fine. But my body needed and wanted that rest that I didn't allow it. And that was to my detriment at the end of the day. So that is one of the things I would definitely do. The other thing I would probably do is be more pushy with my GP and demand more. I think when you're in that state of mind, you're so exhausted from feeling the way you're feeling that you'll just take on board what anybody says and then just go and do whatever you want because you just haven't got the energy to fight it. So I wish I had more energy to fight at the time. Um, yeah, definitely those two things.
Yeah, and just taking time for yourself circles back to also what you were
Absolutely.
saying earlier about the self
Yeah.
care.
And not isolating myself. I think I isolated myself. And I don't know what that was for, whether it was fear or I don't know. But I isolated myself, which is probably not the best thing to do.
Yeah, that's when it's probably the worst thing you could do, because at that
Yeah,
time you could really benefit from community and support,
yeah,
and a
yeah,
problem shared is a problem halved, right? That's the
absolutely.
saying. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to give credit to my clients. They have been amazing. Honestly, they have been so amazing. Even though they haven't a clue what I went through, just little snippets of advice that they'd give was enough for me to keep going. So they have been absolutely amazing.
good to hear. And through this conversation, I've learned so much. Everything you've said is going to be useful, even if it is to one listener, hopefully many more, just to educate those that are around us that this is something that happens and we
Yeah,
need to be aware, and we need to
yeah,
educate those around us about the realities of what women do go through and have to endure, and to just be supportive.
absolutely. I just wish people would be nice and kind. That's all. That's all I want, because I think sometimes women can be terrible ogres to one another, and it's not necessary. Life's too short.
Now, my final question to all my guests is always, what journey are you on next?
Oh, do you know what? I think I'm on a journey of discovery this year. Spoke to my best friend this morning who lives in Greece, and funnily enough, she said to me, Alpa, I read your star signs. She's terrible. She tells me my star signs even if I don't want to hear it. She said it's going to be a good year. I said, you know what? It is going to be a good year because this is the first year in the Chinese calendar again, come 16th of February. And the horse is going to push me through. I've shed what I needed to shed last year with the snake, and the horse is going to carry me through this year. So, yeah, it's a journey of rediscovery for sure.
Amazing. And what a brilliant note to end on, and a very optimistic and positive one as well, a
Yeah.
journey of discovery. Thank you so much, Alpa, for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Journeys with Krutika. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and share. I'd love for you to hit the follow button wherever you get your podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a journey that you want to share, email me at journeyswithkrutika@gmail.com or reach out via my socials. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. Just search Journeys with Krutika, because your journey is extraordinary.